I died surrounded by pink balloons and baby rattles, choking on champagne while my sister held up a onesie that read "Daddy's Girl." And my husband stood beside her with his hand on her pregnant belly. The last thing I heard before I collapsed was my mother's voice. "Finally a grandchild. Claire, you've made us so happy." Not me, the daughter who'd been married for 5 years. Claire, my younger sister, unmarried and 6 months pregnant with my husband's baby. "My name is Rachel Morrison, and I died at 32 in a suburban backyard decorated with pastel streamers, murdered by the champagne my sister handed me with a smile. The champagne she'd laced with poison because I'd finally figured out the truth and threatened to tell everyone. When I opened my eyes again, I was 26 years old, standing in a church in a bridesmaid dress, watching my sister Claire marry Thomas Chun, a kind, wealthy software engineer who adored her. This was Claire's wedding day, 6 years before the baby shower that would end my life. In my previous timeline, this wedding had been perfect. I'd been Claire's maid of honor, had helped plan every detail, had cried happy tears watching my baby sister get her fairy tale ending. I'd been married to Daniel Morrison for 6 months, blissfully happy, and had no idea that in 6 years, Daniel would be the father of Claire's child while I bled out on her perfectly manicured lawn. This time, as I watched Claire walk down the aisle looking radiant in her white dress, I knew exactly what was coming. I knew that her marriage to Thomas would last exactly 4 years before she'd start an affair with my husband. I knew that she'd get pregnant deliberately, planning to steal him from me. I knew that when I discovered the truth, she'd kill me rather than let me expose her. And I had 6 years to stop it. The reception was at an expensive country club. Claire and Thomas looked genuinely happy, dancing and laughing and stealing kisses. My husband Daniel, not yet the man who would betray me, was my date, handsome in his suit, holding my hand and whispering how beautiful I looked. "Your sister seems really happy," Daniel said, watching Claire dance with Thomas. In my original timeline, I'd agreed enthusiastically. I'd been thrilled for Claire, proud of her for finding such a good man. This time I studied Daniel's face carefully. Was he already attracted to Claire? Was this where it started? But Daniel was looking at me, not her. His eyes were full of love, genuine love, the kind I'd believed in completely before it had been destroyed. "Rachel." Daniel touched my cheek. "You okay? You seem distant." "Just emotional," I lied. "My baby sister is married. Someday it'll be us renewing vows, celebrating anniversaries, showing everyone that real love lasts." He kissed me softly. "I love you so much." In my original timeline, those words had meant everything. This time, I felt nothing but a cold determination to protect myself. "I love you too," I said, because that's what he expected to hear. Later that night, after the reception ended and Daniel was asleep beside me in our apartment, I lay awake thinking about the next 6 years. I knew the timeline. Year 1, now everything normal. Claire and Thomas happy. Daniel and I happy. Year 2. Claire has a miscarriage. Falls into depression. Thomas works longer hours to pay for fertility treatments. Year 3. Claire and Thomas start fighting. Marriage begins deteriorating. Year 4. Claire comes to me crying. Says Thomas is distant. I invite her to stay with us temporarily, while they work things out. That's when the affair started. Claire living in our guest room, vulnerable and sad, and Daniel, my caring, empathetic husband, comforting her. Late night conversations. Shared tears. And then, inevitably, more. By year 5, Claire had moved back home, supposedly reconciling with Thomas. But she was pregnant with Daniel's baby. I didn't know until year 6, when she threw the baby shower and accidentally let the truth slip in front of everyone, humiliating me publicly before killing me privately. But this time I had knowledge. I had time. And I had a plan. Over the next few weeks, I made subtle changes to my life. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Lisa Chun, a brilliant woman who specialized in family dynamics and betrayal. I didn't tell her about being reborn, but I told her I had anxiety about my sister and my marriage. "What makes you anxious?" Dr. Chun asked during our second session. "I'm afraid of losing what I have. My husband, my family, my life. That's a common fear. Has something happened to trigger it?" "Not yet. But I feel like something will." Dr. Chun studied me. "Rachel, anxiety about future events is normal. But obsessing over things that haven't happened can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're constantly worried your husband will leave you, you might push him away with your worry. So I should just not worry? I'm saying you should focus on building a strong foundation now. Communicate openly with Daniel. Set healthy boundaries with your family. Create a life so solid that even if challenges come, you're prepared. That advice became my strategy. I focused on my marriage, not frantically but intentionally. Daniel and I started weekly date nights. We talked about our future, our dreams, our boundaries. I made our marriage a priority, and I kept my distance from Claire. "You've been weird lately," Claire said one afternoon when she dropped by unannounced. Something she did often, treating my home like her second apartment. "Weird how?" "Distant. Cold. Like you don't want me around." In my original timeline, I'd been overly accommodating. I'd given Claire keys to our apartment. I'd told her she was always welcome. I'd made her a permanent part of my marriage. "I'm not cold," I said carefully. "I'm just busy. Daniel and I are working on some things." "What things?" "Marriage things. Private things." Claire's face tightened. "Since when do you have secrets from me?" "They're not secrets. They're boundaries." "That's the same thing." She crossed her arms. "Rachel, you're being really strange. Did I do something wrong?" "No. I'm just growing up, I guess. Learning to prioritize my marriage." "Over your sister?" "Not over you. Just alongside you. You have Thomas. I have Daniel. We both need to invest in our marriages." Claire stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. In our original timeline, she'd always come first, even before Daniel, even before my own needs. I'd been the big sister who fixed everything, who gave endlessly, who never said no. This time, I was saying no before she'd even asked for anything. "Fine," Claire said, grabbing her purse. "I can take a hint. I'll leave you to your boundaries." She left in a huff, and I felt both guilty and relieved. That night, Daniel asked, "Did something happen with Claire?" She seemed upset when she left. I told her we needed more couple time. Just us. Daniel smiled and pulled me close. "I like that idea. I love your sister, but yeah, she does drop by a lot. Does it bother you?" "Sometimes. But I didn't want to say anything because I know how close you two are." "Were," I corrected. "We were close. But you're my priority now." "Were." Daniel looked concerned. "Rachel, what's going on? Did you and Claire fight?" "No. I'm just establishing healthy boundaries. My therapist recommended it." "You're seeing a therapist? Is that okay?" "Of course. I think that's great." He kissed my forehead. "You've seemed stressed lately. I'm glad you're taking care of yourself." If only he knew why I was really stressed, preparing for a betrayal that hadn't happened yet, trying to prevent a future I'd already lived through. Year 1 passed relatively smoothly. Claire and Thomas seemed happy. Daniel and I grew closer. I threw myself into my career as a graphic designer, building a client base and reputation. I made sure I was financially independent, something I hadn't been in my original timeline. Then year 2 arrived, and with it the first crack. Claire had a miscarriage. I got the call from Thomas in the middle of the night. "Rachel, it's Claire. She's in the hospital. She lost the baby." In my original timeline, I'd rushed to the hospital immediately, had stayed by Claire's side for days, had neglected my own life to support her through the grief. This time I waited until morning. I brought flowers, stayed for 2 hours, and then went home. "You're leaving already?" Claire asked, her voice small and broken. "I have a work deadline. But I'll call you later, okay? I need you, Rachel." "I know. And I'm here for you. But I also have responsibilities." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "You don't care. You don't care that I lost my baby." "Of course I care. I'm heartbroken for you. But Claire, I can't drop everything in my life every time you need me. That's not healthy for either of us." "Healthy? I just lost my child and you're talking about healthy boundaries." "I'm talking about being there for you in a sustainable way, not burning myself out trying to fix your pain." Thomas, who'd been quiet until then, spoke up. "Rachel's right, honey. She has her own life. We can't expect her to put everything on hold." Claire looked at her husband like he'd betrayed her. "You too. I'm not saying she doesn't care. I'm saying we need to learn to support each other instead of depending on your sister for everything. This was different from my original timeline. Thomas had been more passive before, letting Claire depend on me entirely. Now he was setting boundaries too. Claire turned her face away from both of us. Fine. Leave. Both of you. I'll deal with this alone. You're not alone, Thomas said firmly. I'm here. I'm your husband. Let me help you. I left them to work it out, feeling both guilty and empowered. Over the next few months, Claire spiraled into depression, but this time Thomas was present. He cut back his work hours. He attended therapy sessions with her. He was the partner she needed instead of the absent husband he'd been in my original timeline. And because Claire wasn't leaning on me, she was leaning on Thomas. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was stronger than it had been before. Year 3 brought new challenges. Claire and Thomas started fertility treatments, which was stressful and expensive. Claire called me often, wanting to vent about the hormone injections, the disappointment of negative pregnancy tests, the strain on her marriage. I listened, but I kept my distance. I didn't invite her to stay with us. I didn't make myself overly available. I was supportive but boundaried. You've changed, Claire said during one of our coffee dates. You're not the sister I remember. People grow up. It's more than that. You're colder. More selfish. I'm not selfish for having boundaries. You used to be there for me no matter what. Now you're always busy, always prioritizing other things. I'm prioritizing my marriage, my career, my mental health. That's not selfish, Claire. That's necessary. She stared at me over her coffee cup. Sometimes I feel like you don't even like me anymore. The truth was complicated. I loved my sister, the innocent version of her who existed in this timeline, who hadn't yet betrayed me. But I also remembered the woman who'd seduced my husband, carried his baby, and poisoned me at her own baby shower. I love you, I said carefully, but I love myself too. And I'm learning that I can't pour from an empty cup. That's therapist talk. Maybe. But it's true. By year 4, I was waiting for the crisis. The moment when Claire would come to me crying about her marriage, asking to stay with us, setting the stage for the affair. But it didn't happen. Instead, Claire and Thomas announced they were pregnant. Naturally, after years of trying. They were ecstatic. My parents were thrilled. Everyone celebrated. And I felt nothing but cold suspicion. Was this it? Was this the baby that was supposedly Daniel's? Had the timeline shifted but the affair still happened? I watched Daniel carefully at Claire's pregnancy announcement dinner. He congratulated Thomas enthusiastically, hugged Claire politely, and showed no signs of unusual attachment. You're happy for them, right? Daniel asked me later that night. Of course. You seem tense at dinner. I'm just surprised. They've been having so much trouble conceiving. Sometimes it just happens. That's great news for them. I studied his face, looking for any hint of guilt or attraction. But Daniel seemed genuinely happy for my sister and her husband, nothing more. Over Claire's pregnancy, I maintained careful boundaries. I attended her doctor's appointments when invited but didn't go overboard. I helped with the baby shower planning but didn't take it over completely. I was present but not enmeshed. And I watched for any signs of inappropriate closeness between Claire and Daniel. Nothing. Daniel was kind to Claire but not unusually so. He didn't offer to help with baby preparations. He didn't spend extra time with her. He didn't show any signs of being the father of her child. The baby was born. A healthy girl named Sophie. Claire and Thomas were overjoyed. My parents were ecstatic grandparents. Everyone loved the new addition to our family. And still, I waited for the other shoe to drop. It came 3 months after Sophie's birth, in the most unexpected way. Claire showed up at my door at midnight, baby in her arms, crying hysterically. Rachel, I need help. I don't know what to do. In my original timeline, this was the moment, 4 years into my marriage, Claire showing up needing support, me inviting her to stay, the affair beginning. But this time was different. What happened? I asked, not inviting her in immediately. Thomas and I had a huge fight. He said terrible things. I can't go back there tonight. What kind of things? He accused me of being in love with someone else. Of the baby not being his. My blood ran cold. Is he right? Claire looked at me with shock. What? No. Rachel, how could you even ask that? Because you're here at midnight instead of working things out with your husband. I needed my sister. And I'm your sister. But Claire, you're a wife first. A mother first. You can't run to me every time your marriage gets hard. This isn't hard, Rachel. This is devastating. He's questioning Sophie's paternity. Then get a paternity test and prove him wrong. Claire stared at me like I'd slapped her. You think I should have to prove that my own husband is my daughter's father? I think if he has doubts, it's better to address them head-on than to run away. I can't believe you. My own sister taking his side. I'm not taking sides. I'm telling you that running to me isn't going to fix your marriage. Go home, Claire. Talk to Thomas. Get counseling. Figure this out together. And if he throws me out, then go to mom and dad's. Or check into a hotel. But you're not staying here. Claire's tears turned to anger. Why are you being so cruel? I just need one night. No. Because one night becomes a week, becomes a month, becomes you living in my guest room and undermining my marriage with your presence. Undermining your marriage? Rachel, what are you talking about? I'm talking about maintaining healthy boundaries. About protecting my relationship. About not letting your drama become my crisis. Claire held Sophie tighter. I thought you loved me. I do love you. That's why I'm telling you the truth instead of enabling you. Go home, Claire. Fix your marriage. She left, furious and hurt, and I closed the door feeling both guilty and relieved. Daniel came downstairs, having heard the whole conversation. That was harsh. It was necessary. She's your sister. She needed help. She needed to learn to solve her own problems. With her husband, not with me. Daniel looked at me with something I couldn't quite read. Concern? Confusion? You really have changed. Is that bad? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I don't recognize you anymore. That scared me. In my original timeline, Daniel had loved me completely until Claire had stolen him away. Now I was different, stronger, more boundaried, more self-protective. What if that made me less lovable? Do you still love me? I asked quietly. Of course. But Rachel, you're so guarded now. So suspicious of everyone. Even your own sister. I'm not suspicious. I'm just careful. It's the same thing. We went to bed tense, not touching, the first real strain in our marriage. The next morning Thomas called me. Thank you for sending Claire home last night. Did you guys work things out? We're trying. We're going to counseling. And we're getting a paternity test like you suggested. I'm sorry you're going through this. Rachel, can I ask you something? Why did you suggest the test? Do you think Claire cheated on me? I thought about my original timeline. About Daniel being Sophie's father. About Claire's affair and my death. I don't know what Claire did or didn't do, I said honestly. But I know that doubt will poison your marriage if you don't address it. Better to know for sure. You're right. Thanks for being honest. The paternity test came back a week later. Thomas was Sophie's biological father. I felt massive relief wash over me. The timeline had changed. Whatever I'd done, maintaining boundaries, staying distant, protecting my marriage, had worked. Claire hadn't had an affair with Daniel. Sophie wasn't his child. The baby shower murder wouldn't happen. I'd saved myself. Or so I thought. 6 months later, Claire threw a first birthday party for Sophie. It was at my parents' house, decorated with balloons and streamers. Family and friends gathered to celebrate. Daniel and I arrived with a gift, an educational toy I'd carefully selected. Claire greeted us warmly, seemingly having forgiven me for turning her away that midnight. Thank you for coming, she said, hugging me. I know things have been strained between us. I'm glad Sophie's doing well. She is. And Thomas and I are doing better too. Therapy really helped. The party was pleasant. Sophie was adorable. Thomas seemed happy. My parents doted on their grandchild. Everything seemed perfect. Then, during the cake cutting, Claire tapped her glass to get everyone's attention. I have an announcement, she said, beaming. Thomas and I are pregnant again. Everyone cheered. My parents cried happy tears. Thomas looked proud and excited. And then Claire looked directly at me and said, "We're so grateful to everyone who supported us through our fertility journey. Especially to Daniel, who was so kind when I needed a friend. My blood turned to ice. Daniel looked confused. I didn't do anything special. You were there for me during my darkest time, Claire continued, her eyes never leaving mine. When my own sister turned me away, you listened. You cared. You reminded me that I deserved love and support. I felt the room spinning. This wasn't right. Daniel hadn't been there for Claire. I'd made sure of that. I'd kept them apart. When was this? I heard myself ask. Last year. When I was struggling with postpartum depression, Daniel would call to check on me. We'd talk for hours. He never judged me, never made me feel weak. I looked at Daniel. You were calling my sister? She was going through a hard time, Daniel said defensively. You were being so distant with her, so I thought. You thought you'd step in and save her? I thought I'd be supportive. Is that wrong? The party had gone silent. Everyone was watching us. Claire spoke again, her voice sweet but her eyes hard. I'm so lucky to have a brother-in-law who cares. Not everyone would go out of their way to support their wife's struggling sister. What does out of your way mean? I demanded. Just phone calls. Coffee sometimes. Nothing inappropriate. Claire smiled. Although Rachel seems to think any contact between family members is inappropriate, I think going behind my back to develop a relationship with my sister is inappropriate, I said, my voice shaking. We didn't go behind your back, Daniel said. You knew Claire was struggling. You chose not to help her. I chose differently. You chose to form a secret friendship with my sister. It wasn't secret. You just never asked. My mother intervened. Rachel, honey, you're making a scene. This is Sophie's birthday party. Mom, did you know about this? About Daniel supporting Claire? Yes. We all thought it was very kind of him, especially since you were being so cold to your own sister. I looked around the room. Everyone was looking at me like I was the villain, jealous, controlling, unreasonable. Claire was looking at me with triumph in her eyes. And I realized, the timeline hadn't changed as much as I'd thought. I'd prevented the affair during Claire's marriage crisis, but I'd inadvertently created a new connection between Daniel and Claire. They'd bonded over my coldness and boundaries. They'd formed a relationship based on commiserating about how difficult I was. I'd been so focused on preventing the original timeline that I'd created a new path to the same destination. I need air, I said, and walked out of the party. Daniel followed me outside. Rachel, what is going on with you? You're acting paranoid. How long have you been calling Claire? I don't know. 6 months? A year? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. My sister, who you've been secretly befriending, just announced her pregnancy in front of everyone. And something about it feels wrong. Wrong how? I couldn't tell him. I couldn't say. In another timeline, you had an affair with Claire and she had your baby. That sounded insane. I just have a bad feeling. A bad feeling isn't a reason to attack me in front of your entire family. I didn't attack you. You implied I was having an inappropriate relationship with your sister. Do you have any idea how that made me look? Do you have any idea how betrayed I feel? We stared at each other, years of trust cracking between us. I think we need counseling, Daniel said finally. I think we need space, I replied. That night I went to stay with a friend. Daniel stayed at our apartment. We'd never spent a night apart before, except for work trips. Over the next few weeks we did start counseling. Dr. Martinez, a marriage therapist, listened to both our perspectives. Rachel feels that boundaries were violated, Dr. Martinez summarized. Daniel feels that compassion was criminalized. Does that sound accurate? Yes, we both said. Rachel, can you explain why Daniel's friendship with Claire feels like a violation? I struggled to find words that didn't sound paranoid. Because he did it behind my back. Because he knew I was trying to maintain distance from Claire, and he undermined that. Daniel, did you intend to undermine Rachel's boundaries? No. I just saw someone struggling and offered support. I didn't think it needed to be a secret, because I wasn't doing anything wrong. But you didn't tell Rachel either. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. I guess I knew she'd be upset. She's been so weird about Claire for years now. Weird how? Distant. Cold. Like she's waiting for Claire to do something wrong. Dr. Martinez looked at me. Rachel, are you waiting for Claire to do something wrong? I'm protecting myself. From what? I couldn't answer. From a betrayal that hadn't happened yet? From a sister who'd murdered me in another timeline? I don't know, I finally said. I just feel like I can't trust her. Has she given you reason not to trust her in this timeline? No. Then where is this mistrust coming from? Over the following sessions, Dr. Martinez helped us understand the pattern. I'd been so focused on preventing a future betrayal that I damaged my present relationships. My vigilance had become paranoia. My boundaries had become walls. Rachel, I understand wanting to protect yourself, Dr. Martinez said during one session, but you can't live your entire life defending against something that might never happen. But what if it does happen? Then you'll handle it. But in the meantime, you're destroying your marriage with fear. Daniel reached for my hand. I love you, Rachel. I've always loved you. But I can't live with someone who treats me like I'm one mistake away from betraying her. I don't think that. You do. You've thought it for years. I can see it in how you watch me, how you question everything I do, how you've isolated us from your family. I was protecting us. From what? From love? From connection? From family? He was right. I'd been so focused on preventing the original timeline that I'd forgotten to live in this one. I'm sorry, I whispered. I've been so scared of losing you that I've been pushing you away. Why are you scared? What do you think is going to happen? I couldn't tell him the truth. So I said the next closest thing. I had nightmares. About you and Claire. About losing everything. And I let those nightmares control me. Nightmares aren't real, Rachel. I know. But they felt real. They feel real. Daniel pulled me close. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not interested in Claire. I never have been, I never will be. She's my sister-in-law, nothing more. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But then Claire went into premature labor at 7 months pregnant. Daniel and I rushed to the hospital with the rest of the family. The doctors were able to stabilize her, but the baby needed to be delivered immediately. Thomas was in surgery when Claire started panicking. I need someone with me. Please. Someone. My mother and father were in the waiting room. I was about to volunteer when Claire grabbed Daniel's hand. Daniel, will you stay? Please. Daniel looked at me asking permission. I wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed no. But I was trying to be better. Less paranoid. Less controlled by fear. Go, I said. Support her. Daniel went into the delivery room with Claire while Thomas was being prepped for surgery. I sat in the waiting room with my parents, my heart pounding with anxiety. 40 minutes later, Daniel emerged looking shaken. She's okay. The baby's okay. It's a boy. And Thomas. Still in surgery. They found appendicitis, which is what caused the premature labor. My father stood. Can we see Claire? She's asking for Rachel, Daniel said, looking at me. I went to Claire's room, where she was holding a tiny baby boy wrapped in blue. She looked exhausted but peaceful. Rachel, she whispered. I need to tell you something. What? I was wrong. About Daniel. About you being cold. Claire. Let me finish. Being in labor, thinking I might die, having Daniel there instead of Thomas, it made me realize something. Daniel's a good man. He was kind to me. But he loves you. The whole time I was in labor, he talked about you. How strong you are. How much he admires you. How he doesn't understand why you've been so distant, but he knows you must have your reasons. Tears streamed down my face. I've been jealous of you, Claire continued. My whole life I've been jealous. You were smarter, prettier, more successful. You got Daniel, this amazing man who loves you completely. And I think part of me wanted to see if I could take him from you. Not because I wanted him, but because I wanted to prove I could. Claire. I'm not saying I tried to seduce him. I didn't. But I tested the boundaries. I called him more than I needed to. I shared more than was appropriate. I wanted to see if he'd choose me over you. My worst fears confirmed. Not quite the affair from my original timeline, but the seeds of it. And I managed to ask. And he never wavered. Not once. Every conversation came back to you. Every confidence I tried to share, he redirected. He was never inappropriate. Never suggested anything wrong. He was just kind. And loyal. Completely loyal to you. Why are you telling me this? Because you were right to protect yourself. I am the person you were afraid I'd be. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Thomas was wheeled in then, groggy from surgery but desperate to see his wife and baby. Claire handed me the baby and reached for her husband. And I stood there holding my nephew, realizing that the timeline had changed but the pattern remained. Claire was still manipulative. Daniel was still being tested. The difference was that this time I'd been vigilant, and Daniel had been loyal. The question was, could I finally let go of my fear? Over the next few months I tried. I really tried to relax, to trust, to believe that I'd changed the future enough. Daniel and I renewed our vows on our 7th anniversary, exactly when, in my original timeline, Claire would have been 6 months pregnant with his baby at my funeral. Instead, Claire and Thomas had 2 healthy children. My parents were happy grandparents. Daniel and I were stronger than ever. And I was 32 years old, the age I died in my original timeline, and still alive. I'd won. I'd changed fate. I'd prevented my own murder. Or so I thought. The real test came a month later when Claire threw a party, not a baby shower this time, but a baptism for her son James. It was at the same venue with the same pink and blue decorations, with the same family and friends gathered. Too similar to my original death for comfort. I was on edge the entire party, watching Claire, watching Daniel, watching for any signs of danger. Then during the cake cutting, someone handed me a glass of champagne. I looked up. Claire was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. To family, she said, raising her glass. Everyone raised their glasses. I stared at mine, memories flooding back. In my original timeline, this was how it had ended. Poison champagne. Claire's triumphant smile. Rachel. Daniel touched my arm. You okay? Everyone was watching me, waiting for me to drink. I looked at Claire. Really looked at her. And I saw something in her eyes, not malice but concern. Genuine concern. I can't, I said, setting down the glass. Can't what? My mother asked. I can't drink alcohol. I'm pregnant. The room exploded with joy. My mother cried. My father hugged me. Daniel looked shocked and thrilled. And Claire started to cry. I'm so happy for you, she whispered, hugging me tight. You're going to be an amazing mother. Thank you, I said, still watching her carefully. But there was no poison. No murder attempt. No betrayal. Just a sister who was genuinely happy for me. Later, Daniel pulled me aside. You're pregnant? When did you find out? This morning. I was going to tell you tonight, but then you got scared. Yeah. Of Claire. Of history repeating itself. Daniel held me close. What history? What are you so afraid of? I couldn't tell him about my original timeline, but I could tell him a version of the truth. I've been having these vivid nightmares for years. About Claire betraying me. About you leaving me for her. About dying at a party just like this one. And I've let those nightmares control my entire life. That sounds exhausting. It has been. Maybe having a baby will help. Give you something else to focus on. Maybe. My pregnancy was healthy and uneventful. Claire was supportive in appropriate ways. Attending my baby shower. Offering advice when asked, but respecting boundaries. Daniel was devoted, excited, present. Our daughter was born on a Tuesday morning, perfect and healthy. We named her Hope. Hope for what? My mother asked when I told her the name. Hope for the future, I said. Hope that things can be different than we fear. The years passed. Hope grew into a bright, funny toddler. Daniel and I celebrated our 10th anniversary. Claire and Thomas remained happily married. My parents aged gracefully. And slowly, carefully, I began to relax. I was 35, 38, 40. Each year past my original death age felt like a gift. The nightmares faded. The paranoia eased. I began to trust, not blindly but healthily. I maintained boundaries, but they were reasonable boundaries, not walls. Dr. Chun, my original therapist who I still saw occasionally, said during one session, "You've done remarkable work, Rachel. When you first came to me, you were living in constant fear of a future that hadn't happened. Now you're living in the present. It's still hard sometimes. I still have moments where I'm sure something terrible is about to happen. That's normal. Anxiety doesn't disappear completely. But it no longer controls your life. No, it doesn't. What changed? I thought about that. I stopped trying to prevent the future and started building the present. I stopped seeing everyone as potential threats and started seeing them as people making choices, and trusting myself to handle whatever choices they make. That's profound growth. When I was 45, something unexpected happened. Claire's marriage fell apart. Not because of an affair, because Thomas had a gambling addiction that had drained their savings and put them in serious debt. Claire filed for divorce. In my original timeline, I would have panicked. This was the crisis that had led to Claire moving in with us, that had started the affair. This was the moment everything fell apart. But this time I was different. And so was Claire. "I'm not going to ask to stay with you," Claire said when we met for coffee to discuss her situation. "I appreciate that. I know our history. I know I've tested your boundaries too many times. I'm learning. What are you going to do?" "I'm moving in with Mom and Dad temporarily, just until I can afford my own place. I'm getting a job. The kids and I will be fine. I'm proud of you." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Are you really? Because I feel like such a failure." "You're not a failure. You're handling a difficult situation with dignity and strength. I wish I could be more like you. You always had everything together." I almost laughed. "Claire, I've spent 15 years terrified that you were going to destroy my life." "What? Why?" I'd never told her about my original timeline. But maybe now, with both of us older and wiser, I could tell her something close to the truth. "I had this recurring nightmare when we were younger. That you would have an affair with Daniel, get pregnant, and kill me when I found out." Claire stared at me in horror. "Rachel, that's horrible." It felt so real. For years I lived like it had already happened. Like I was just waiting for it to come true. "Is that why you were so cold to me? Why you pushed me away?" "I was trying to prevent it. By keeping distance, maintaining boundaries, protecting my marriage." "Did it work?" "Yes and no. I prevented the affair. But I also damaged our relationship. I treated you like a threat instead of a person." "I was a threat," Claire admitted quietly. "Not in the way you imagined. But I was jealous, manipulative, always testing boundaries. You were right to protect yourself. But I went too far. I let fear control me. And now I'm trying to trust that people can change. That you've changed. That I've changed." Claire reached across the table and took my hand. "I have changed, Rachel. Therapy helped. Having kids helped. Losing my marriage helped. I've had to face who I was and decide who I want to be." "Who do you want to be?" "Someone you can trust. Someone who respects boundaries. Someone who builds her own life instead of trying to take pieces of yours." Over the next year, Claire proved she meant it. She got a job in marketing. She found a small apartment for her and her kids. She dated briefly but didn't try to involve me or my family in her romantic life. She was independent, responsible, healthy. And slowly, carefully, we rebuilt our relationship. Not the enmeshed, codependent one from our youth, but a mature, boundaried sisterhood. When I was 50, Daniel and I threw a party to celebrate our 25th anniversary. Claire came with her new partner, a kind accountant named Robert who treated her well and respected her boundaries. "Look at us," Claire said as we watched our daughters dancing together. Two middle-aged women who figured their lives out eventually. "Eventually," I agreed. "Do you still have the nightmares?" "Sometimes. But they're just dreams now, not prophecies." I'm glad. I'm glad you can finally relax." "So am I." At 60, I retired from my design firm. Daniel retired from his engineering job. We traveled, we spent time with our grandchildren. We enjoyed the peaceful life we'd built. Claire was grandmother to 4 grandchildren. She'd been married to Robert for 10 years, happy and stable. Thomas had gotten help for his gambling addiction and remarried. Everyone's lives had moved on, healed, evolved. One afternoon, Claire and I sat on my back porch drinking tea. Something we did regularly now, comfortable with each other in a way we'd never been when we were younger. "Can I tell you something?" Claire asked. "Of course. I think I understand your nightmare now." "What do you mean?" "In another version of our lives, a version where you weren't so vigilant, where I wasn't in therapy, where Daniel wasn't so loyal, I think that nightmare could have been real. I think I could have been that person. But you weren't. Only because you didn't let me be. You set boundaries. You protected yourself. You forced me to grow up instead of enabling my worst impulses. So you're saying I saved your life by being cold to you? Claire smiled. Maybe I'm saying you saved both our lives. I thought about my original timeline. About dying at 32, poisoned by my sister, betrayed by my husband, mourned by no one. And I looked at this life. 75 years old, surrounded by family, at peace with my sister, grateful for every day I'd fought to create. Maybe I did, I said. When I was 75, I had a massive stroke. I survived, but barely. The doctor said I had maybe a year left. I spent that year saying goodbye. To Daniel, my love of 50 years. To Hope, my daughter who'd given me 3 grandchildren. To Claire, my sister who'd become my friend. I'm not ready to let you go, Claire said, crying at my bedside. I know. But I've had a good life. A long life. Much longer than I ever expected. What do you mean? I'd never told her the full truth about my rebirth. But now at the end maybe it was time. I died once before, I said. At 32. You poisoned me at your baby shower because I found out you were pregnant with Daniel's baby. Claire's face went white. Rachel, that's the nightmare. No. It was real. In another timeline, another life. And when I died, I woke up at 26 at your wedding, with a chance to do everything differently. That's impossible. Is it? Or is it just unlikely? Claire held my hand, tears streaming down her face. If that's true, if you really lived through that and came back, then you spent our entire adult life protecting yourself from me. From something I did in another world. And you spent our entire adult life proving you weren't that person. We both chose differently, Claire. That's what mattered. I'm so sorry. For who I was in that other life. For who I could have been in this one. Don't be sorry. Be proud. You became someone better. We both did. I died 3 weeks later, peacefully in my sleep, with Daniel holding one hand and Claire holding the other. At my funeral, Claire gave a eulogy that surprised everyone. My sister Rachel saved my life. Not once but countless times. She saved me from my own worst impulses by setting boundaries I resented but needed. She saved me from codependency by forcing me to be independent. She saved me from myself by refusing to enable me. I didn't understand it at the time. I thought she was cold, distant, uncaring. I didn't realize she was protecting both of us from a future that could have destroyed us both. Rachel taught me that love isn't about fixing people. It's about believing they can fix themselves and giving them space to do it. It's about boundaries that feel like rejection but are actually respect. It's about trusting that people can grow, even when it would be easier to assume they can't. She lived her life with intention, with purpose, with the courage to choose herself when everyone told her she should sacrifice for others. And in choosing herself, she gave the rest of us permission to do the same. I'll miss my sister every day. But I'll carry her lessons with me forever. Protect yourself, trust cautiously, love wisely, and never let fear of the future steal the joy of the present. Hope, my daughter, also spoke. My mother was the bravest person I knew. Not because she was fearless, she had plenty of fears. But because she felt the fear and made wise choices anyway. She taught me that you can't control other people's actions, but you can control your responses. That boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to healthier relationships. That protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. She lived 2 lives in a way. The life she feared and the life she built. And she chose to build something beautiful instead of living in fear of what might be destroyed. That's the legacy she left us. The courage to build, the wisdom to protect, and the grace to forgive, including forgiving ourselves. After the funeral, Claire found Hope and handed her an envelope. Your mother asked me to give this to you after she died. Hope opened it to find a letter in my handwriting. Dearest Hope, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm at peace. I want you to know something that I never told you while I was alive. I lived twice. I died at 32 in another timeline, betrayed by people I loved, and was given a second chance to do things differently. That second chance gave me you. It gave me a marriage that lasted 50 years. It gave me time to grow, to heal, to become someone I was proud of. I'm telling you this not because I want you to believe in magic or rebirth, but because I want you to understand something important. Every day is a second chance. Every moment is an opportunity to choose differently than we chose yesterday. I spent years living in fear of a future that might never happen. Don't make that mistake. Build your present with intention. Protect yourself wisely. Trust cautiously but genuinely. Love with boundaries that honor both yourself and others. And if you ever feel like you're living the wrong life, remember, you always have the power to choose differently. Not by going back in time, but by changing course right now. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm grateful that my second chance gave me the gift of being your mother. Live boldly, love wisely, and never let fear write your story. All my love, Mom. Hope read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Do you think it's true? She asked Claire. That she lived twice. I think your mother lived with an awareness most people don't have, Claire said carefully. Whether that came from literal rebirth or exceptional intuition, the result was the same. She made choices that saved her life and changed mine. She really changed your life? She saved it. In this timeline and probably in another one too. Hope folded the letter carefully. I want to live like that. Making choices that matter. Protecting what's important. Building something beautiful. Then do it, Claire said. Honor your mother by living the lessons she taught. 10 years after my death, Claire passed away at 85, peacefully, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. In her will, she left a letter for Hope. Dear Hope, your mother told me the truth before she died. About dying at 32 and being reborn to change our timeline. I didn't know whether to believe her. It sounded impossible. But then I thought about all the ways she was different from other people. How she seemed to see the future in people's choices. How she protected herself from betrayals before they happened. How she knew exactly where boundaries needed to be drawn. If she really did live twice, then I owe my entire life to her vigilance. In the other timeline, I was a murderer. A woman who seduced her sister's husband, got pregnant with his child, and poisoned her sister at a baby shower. In this timeline, I was a flawed but ultimately decent person who learned to respect boundaries, take responsibility, and build my own life instead of stealing pieces of others' lives. The difference between those two versions of me? Your mother's courage to protect herself. So whether her story was literal truth or metaphorical wisdom, the message is the same. We have the power to change our stories by making different choices. Your mother made brave choices that saved us both. Honor her by being brave in your own choices. Protect yourself. Trust wisely. Build a life worth living. And if you ever wonder whether second chances are real, remember this. Your mother gave me a second chance by refusing to enable my worst self. That's a kind of rebirth too. With love and gratitude, Aunt Claire. Hope kept both letters in a locked box. She read them whenever she needed courage to make difficult choices, to set necessary boundaries, to choose herself when others expected sacrifice. She passed the letters to her own daughter eventually, along with the story of the grandmother who'd lived twice and the great-aunt who'd been saved by boundaries. And the lesson continued through generations. Protect yourself, trust wisely, love with boundaries, and never let fear of future betrayal prevent you from building present joy. Because in the end, that's what I learned in my 2 lifetimes. You can't prevent all betrayal. But you can choose to build a life strong enough to survive it. You can set boundaries that protect without imprisoning. You can love without losing yourself. And sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's worst impulses. Even when that someone is your sister, and even when everyone calls you cold for it. I died at 75 in this timeline. 43 years longer than my original death. I died at peace, surrounded by love, mourned by many. That wasn't luck. That was choice. Every single day for 43 years I chose to protect myself, to build boundaries, to trust wisely rather than blindly. And those choices saved my life. Not once but every single day. Incomplete story. Epilogue. 30 years later. Hope was 65 years old, a grandmother herself, when she received an unexpected letter from a stranger. Dear Hope Morrison, my name is Sophie Chen, your cousin Claire's granddaughter. I found letters in my grandmother's papers after she died, including one addressed to you that she never sent. I'm forwarding it to you now. But I also wanted to tell you something strange. I've been having vivid dreams lately. Dreams where I'm living my life but everything goes wrong. Dreams where I make terrible choices that destroy my family. And then I wake up and I'm 17 again and I remember both timelines, the one where everything goes wrong, and the one where I can choose differently. Sounds crazy. But then I found my great-grandmother Claire's letters about your grandmother Rachel, and I realized maybe this runs in families. Maybe we're all given second chances and some of us are just aware of it. I wanted you to know. I'm choosing differently this time. I'm setting boundaries. I'm protecting myself. I'm building a life with intention, not fear. Thank you for keeping the story alive. Thank you for passing down the lesson. Some of us need to live twice to get it right. Gratefully, Sophie-chan. Hope read the letter 3 times, chills running down her spine. Then she wrote back. Dear Sophie, whether your dreams are literal rebirth or metaphorical wisdom, the lesson is the same. Choose wisely. Protect yourself. Build something worth living for. My grandmother would be proud of you for recognizing the pattern and choosing differently. We don't get to control other people's choices, but we get to control our own. Make yours count. With understanding and support, Hope Morrison. And somewhere in whatever comes after death I smiled. Because the legacy I'd left wasn't just about my story. It was about a lesson that could save anyone willing to learn it. You always have the power to choose differently. Even if you feel like you're living the same story again. Even if everyone around you expects you to repeat old patterns. Even if changing course means others will call you cold, paranoid, or selfish. Choose yourself. Build boundaries. Trust wisely. Love without losing yourself. That's how you survive. That's how you thrive. That's how you live a life worth living, in any timeline.